Good morning, Don't Unfriend Me Nation. Matthew Spear from the Don't Unfriend Me Show. What are we doing today? Gosh, I got a show for you. The Houthis. No, it's not what happened when Darius Rucker left the Blowfish. The Houthis are a terrorist organization. Of course, the media is saying they're rebels because nothing like running PR for a terrorist organization. They're terrorists. They're out of Yemen. They're supported by Iran and backed by Iran. And they made some threats, and they carried it out. They took a ship hostage. They pirated it. I'm going to tell you all about it. We're going to watch the video because I got it for you. Stick around. We'll be right back in about 15 seconds.
Do you want the truth? Are you tired of being so confused? You feel like you're more f***ed up than the lies on the evening news? Well, just step right in. We can talk about it all as friends. And if you want,
Matthew Spear from the Don't Unfriend Me Show. Good to have you here today. Thanks for stopping by. That's Still Point, the band for the Don't Unfriend Me Show, STILLPOINT. Thanks for coming by. What do we got? We don't negotiate with terrorists. Well, kind of. This is the galaxyleader, that big vessel in the sea, and that is an Mi-17 Russian-made helo, which was given to Iran because, well, that's what Russians do, is proxy Iran. And then, of course, the Iranians gave it to the Houthis in Yemen. Now, a lot of people are surprised and saying, wait a second, the Houthis have an air force? I'll get to that in a second. I'll get to the flags in a second. One of them is the flag of Yemen without the stars. There is several different iterations. There's also about 40 different iterations of the Mi-17 and its mission. We'll talk a little bit about the security they had. I'll tell you a little bit about the options and what's in the area and what we can expect from the U.S. as far as a response in Israel. But this is the Houthi statement. We will sink your ships. And I guess they weren't playing Battleship after all. Hasbro game. They were serious. And a lot of people probably laughed it off and said, come on, this is, what do you have, a fishing trolley? What are you going to do here? Well, they actually executed a fairly successful surprise where people weren't ready for it, didn't really expect it to happen. And they're not going to get away with it again. And if they do, it's not going to happen many more times. You might see this once or twice before Israel and the United States says, okay, gloves are off. But it's an interesting thing is how can these companies respond and why this ship of all ships? Because this threat was in regards to Israel and the occupation of Palestine. And they said, we're going to go ahead and take Israeli ships that are marked and we're going to sink them. We're going to take them hostage, etc. Here's the video. Let's watch it together. Now, first things first, I'm going to, of course, give you all the analysis that I possibly can because this is what I like to do. This is an Mi-17. Like I said, it's an older chopper. It's got many different operations and many different missions. In fact, some of them do electronic countermeasures from as simple as supply, insertion. There's plenty of things that this thing does, and it's a fairly reliable chopper. One, like I said, that people are a little bit surprised that the Houthis are able to navigate, especially when you're looking at going about, 15 knots into a headwind. Seas are probably around 3 to 5 feet. You are going into the wind, which is optimal for the vessel and the chopper in this case. Vessels don't usually have a choice. A chopper does. A chopper can go ahead and really come in from any angle, but it wants to move along with the vehicle and its trajectory. That's the most optimal way. The interesting thing about this are the two flags, and I'm going to go over both of them with you. But the first one, like I said, is the flag of Yemen. The second one is an interesting tell about what the motive of this country or state is. Now, I've done a few of these myself on the back of an LCC and also on a carrier. You'll notice first thing that there's this olive drab building on top, and what it says is winch only. It's not for people. It's actually for helos coming in. Do not land here. Essentially, it's saying you can put a winch here. That will take that weight, but you certainly don't want to land a chopper. There's a giant green circle as well, which some people might be saying, well, that looks like a helicopter landing pad, a circle or a hexagon. Japanese fleets, Chinese fleets use circles. British and Americans use hexagon. Just a little bit of information if you did not know. But there is no helicopter landing pad on this vessel, which makes this an extremely interesting landing. And most pilots might say, oh, I could thread that like a needle. Well, I'm telling you, I've done this a few times myself, not flying, but obviously being a passenger. And I'll tell you that it's a little nerve-wracking. You'll see that when he comes in and where he chooses to land, there's two vents. There's like this vestibule, like glass area. Then there is a railing that's oblong that has multiple angles on it, and then a light. All of those are obstacles that a chopper, they have no desire to touch, because the interesting thing is the moment that that chopper touches any of those things, it's going to transfer energy, and then that thing's going to be, essentially just not flying anymore. It's a dangerous thing. You've got to put all your wheels down. You've got to make sure you come in at a certain speed. You have to put it down accurately, because if you don't, you're going to wipe the whole thing. It's not like we haven't seen accidents before, and we can watch videos on YouTube of choppers going in on vessels, whether it's the Coast Guard or the Navy or any other, and you see these things clip a light, or their wheel hits a railing and it puts it off center, and then blades turn over, and then that thing's gone. It's not something that most people would think that the Houthis could do, and we're going to find out here shortly that it's not. It's probably an Iranian pilot, or it's an extremely well-trained Iranian a Houthi who was trained by Iran. It's a fairly confident approach. I mean, this guy's just going all for it. Once again, look at that space. You can see by the shadow it's going to be a little disproportionate, but it's just not a lot of clearance there. And the fact that they know that that area, that those walls, fabrication will be able to hold the weight of a chopper. And we're not talking about, this is an engine locomotive or anything, but choppers aren't necessarily the lightest things in the world. And that's why certain areas say you can only put a winch here versus landing a chopper here. They obviously knew enough from the structural integrity of this area that a chopper could be supported with this landing. It's a pretty good landing. Now, the rest of this is a complete shit show, and it looks like two monkeys humping a football. You've got 8 to 10 guys that come off. I didn't even count. Guys are wearing zip string packs. The body armor that they're wearing, they're not even wearing body armor. They've got several flag events here where the front lead guy is getting flagged by muzzle just all day long. The guys, it's just a complete shit show. And any security group would have been able to hold these guys off. They have about a 70, 80-yard run-up with very little cover, 2 narrow sideways. This should be 2 teams, left and right, stacked on top of each other, single file, and moving forward. You probably would have a guy with a heavier weapon up front, like a saw, to lay down suppressing fire if they need to fan out and get behind and get under cover. These things didn't happen. You would also have maybe a guy or 2 on overwatch, to a long-range shot, just to make sure anyone coming out of the forecastle. None of this takes place. These guys just like roaches, just scurry for the front forecastle. And if there was any security group, most assuredly all of them, if not most of them, would be dead. This front guy is fighting with his firearm. He's completely exposed. This guy normally would take a front position. It would be a heavier weapon, and he'd be covering to lay down any type of fire up front so the rest of the guys can exfil off the chopper. Chopper itself waves off and then dusts off at this point. Once again, a pretty effective move. This guy does have some combat training, obviously, just the way he flies. Most pilots would probably tell you that he does have a lot of experience, and by that landing, he obviously touches wheels. This wasn't a rope insertion. He didn't hover and they didn't jump off. This guy landed, touched, and left. Once again, that's where the expertise of this mission was, and that's where it ends. Flag. Guy to the top right side with no cover, just waiting to get clipped. These 2 guys sharing cover, which means there is no cover because both of their left side and right side is completely exposed. Weapon down while moving forward, running, not necessarily. Heartbeat's going to race up. Your shot selection's going to be worse. It's just these little things that you learn in a situation when you're in the military. Is slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And these guys are just fast, and they're not doing an effective job. If there was any resistance, these guys would be dead. Flag. This guy's not out of cover. I mean, he's out of cover completely. This guy If this guy slips, hits a water spot, if they hit a rogue wave, this guy's head's going to turn into a canoe. Two single guys going into a single entry. There could be three guys with trench shotguns in there. They should be stacked. They should go in multiple at a time. Once again, there's no riot shield. There's nothing to take any ballistics that come their way. It's just, I've made my point. It's a shitty operation. And then, of course, they go into the storage area and give us some Ali Ali Akbar and all that other stuff. This is the flag of Hijaz. It's the Arab Revolt flag. It's the second flag that was posterior to the original flag of Yemen. This says a lot. It says that this is in support of Palestine and the Arab Revolt. This is the Mi-17 Russian-made proxied helo. And this is an interesting thing because, like I said, a lot of people were surprised about it. But this is the Sana'a International Airport on March 28th, 2015. There's your 17. You also have an older MiG there. There's two of them. This is pretty much the entire Yemeni Air Force and was taken by the Houthis. So once again, not a big shock. I think people are shocked by the overall intricacy of the landing more than anything in the insertion, like I've said repeatedly. The Galaxy Leader is in the bottom right-hand corner, not an Israeli vessel. It's actually Japanese. I believe it's a Nippon or an NYK vessel and is the company. Completely empty, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. Here's what it comes down to, and these are the nuts straight. Among almost 1,500 ships transiting the straits every month, there may be scores that could be linked to Israel and that are thus vulnerable in the future to Houthi hijackings. This isn't something that people should take lightly. Shipping must go on, and what may come, but Israel-linked ships need to be aware, are they at the mercy of the Houthis? And probably not, but the options to prevent further hijackings are limited really to 4. The national media is saying that there are a bunch of options, including negotiations, which ones are viable and which ones aren't. First of all, sending armed ships to accompany commercial traffic is a possibility, destroying or severely limiting the Houthi offensive capacity at sea, and persuading them to refrain from attacking. I have another one, and I'll give you my nuts on that. For the first option, the question is, who could provide armed naval patrols in the Red Sea? I wonder, who could it be? Could it be my former military and my wonderful United States Navy? Saudi Arabia and Egypt, countries bordering the Red Sea, have strong and sophisticated navies, kinda. But Saudi Arabia is in an uneasy truce with the Houthis, which they are really kind of not interested in disturbing. Egypt is trying to remain neutral, of course, and would not want to get dragged into the tensions with the Houthis either. Israel cannot spare any ships for their task, and the only force left to deal with the Houthi threat would be the United States of America and our Navy. Since October 7th, the U.S. has deployed many assets to the Middle East, if you are not aware, centered around 2 carrier strike groups known as CSGs. The one is in the Med. The CSG-12 is led by the newest and most modern nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, the USS Gerald Ford. The CSG-2 is currently in the Gulf of Oman and is fronted by the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower. Each aircraft carrier is accompanied by a guided missile cruiser, 2 or 3 destroyers, and a flotilla of auxiliaries. Don't forget the subs. We always forget to mention the subs. But those auxiliaries are tankers, store ships, and mobile repair bases, which allows the carrier group to work indefinitely. Each of the 2 CSGs has a clearly defined task. CSG-12 is to monitor the wider area of Israel, Palestine, Lebanon, Syria, and Iraq, and act against any threat that could escalate the conflict. The CSG-2 is there to watch Iran and act against if the situation escalates. The Eisenhower CSG is being kept outside the Strait of Hormuz as a direct message to Iran that the U.S. has no hostile intentions yet. Iran's leader, the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has made it clear that his country would continue to support Hamas and the Palestinian people, but it does not want to go to war itself. Interesting. They backpedaled pretty fast. I guess a couple carrier groups make that happen. Thus, the CSG-2 is demonstrating a less than warlike intention, staying in the Gulf of Oman, from which its aircraft could still reach targets inside Iran if the need arises, or it could move into the Gulf in the unlikely case that the U.S. would want to escalate its threat. Outside of the CSGs, the U.S. Navy also has individual ships monitoring Houthi missile launches. On October 19th, you may remember the USS Carney shot down several Houthi missiles and drones targeting Israel. With all these assets having specific tasks, American options are kind of limited in the sense that if you pull them off one, the mission would then suffer. The only ships that can be used to escort commercial shipping are those grouped around the amphibious carrier, the USS Bataan, currently just south of the Suez. Moving it south would weaken U.S. potential to respond to any escalation around Gaza. Which brings us to the second option. The Houthis are known for their readiness to take on even stronger enemies. The U.S. targeting them directly could risk a major escalation. Washington could ask Israel to target Houthi ports with long-range missiles, but even that is risky. So we come to the third option, de-escalation. Don't forget my fourth, which I'll give to you. You may as well wish in one hand and shit in the other and see which one will be full first if you expect the United States or Israel or the Houthis to be open to negotiation, or dare I say, the Iranians. The last and only true option is to utilize or advance early response systems. This former intel analyst believes they can track every deployable vehicle that could pull off a pirating operation such as this. The U.S. would need to classify all further flights in international shipping lanes as a direct threat, similar to a missile launch that the Houthis have perpetrated before, as I mentioned. This would be a clear warning that all further flights would result in a shoot-down authorization order and a no-fly zone would be installed. The Israelis and Americans will only take one or two more of these attempts before doing just that. Terrorists are not to be negotiated with or appeased. Their air force is essentially a couple of MiGs from the Vietnam era and a few Russian Soviet choppers. This could be over in 5 minutes if they continue to get froggy. As Aldine said, f*** around and find out. I don't think they have the moxie. I think this is an attempt just to do what they always do, which is to try to be bigger than they are. They're about to find out that the United States will slap them silly, and then they won't have an air force. I wonder what they'll do next. Folks, thanks for watching the Don't Unfriend Me Show. If you like today's show, do me a favor. Go over to the Don't Unfriend Me Show and follow us at The Dumb Show, and go to Spreely TV. You can go ahead and find us there on all your Roku, Apple, and Fire Stick devices. Watch the show live. And speaking of live, we will be here tonight at 8 o'clock. With Olivia and myself. Thanks for watching the Don't Unfriend Me Show. God bless, and we'll see you next time.
Adjusting transmitter output.
This is the Don't Unfriend Me Show with your hosts, Matt, Leroy, Amy, Olivia, and Mike. Geopolitics, military analysis, and election coverage. Coming to you live on the Spreely.tv network and all major social media channels at The Dumb Show. Honest, direct, unfiltered. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern. We can agree, we can disagree. Just don't unfriend me.